Madam Speaker, I have a few questions for my colleagues. What if our foreign policy of the past century is deeply flawed and has not served our national security interests? What if we wake up one day and realize that the terrorist threat is a predictable consequence of our meddling in the affairs of others and has nothing to do with us being free and prosperous?
I don't see that we have the authority to all of a sudden impose our system of justice across the entire world. I do not think it's effective. I think it drums up more anti-American hostility more than it achieves justice.
It has nothing to do with national security. Matter of fact, our national security is more jeopardized by permitting this to happen because we're liable to start a war. We're liable to have our military men killed. We're liable to have more attacks on us by terrorists.
Our foolish policy in Iraq invites terrorist attacks against U.S. territory and incites the Islamic fundamentalists against us.
Our foreign policy of military interventionism has brought us death and destruction to many foreign lands and loss of life for many Americans. From Korea and Vietnam to Serbia, Iran, Iraq, and now Afghanistan, we have ventured far from our shores in search of wars to fight. There is no evidence that this policy serves the interests of world peace. It certainly increases the danger to all Americans as we become the #1 target of terrorists.
Our arrogant policy and attitude of superiority will continue to elicit a smoldering hatred toward us, and out of sheer frustration will motivate even more terrorist attacks against us.
The American people are sick and tired of the endless no-win wars around the world. It is us today that are suffering. We don't have the jobs. People are unemployed and we're getting hit with the inflation. We're suffering from the overextension of the wars.
And we want to protect our civil liberties as well as our economic liberties.
And besides, it's the law of the land, and it can be found in our Constitution, and we demand respect for it. The most precious thing that we can do for our next generation, the debt is a concern, but the most valuable thing that we can give the next generation and allow this generation to have is to have our freedoms back.
There is no authority in the Constitution to have a Federal Reserve System, no authority for the welfare state, and no authority for the police state. It's not there.
We should think about protecting our borders rather than the borders between Iraq and Afghanistan. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Where they believe that we have this moral responsibility to use force to go around the world and say, you will do it our way or else. Well, force doesn't work. It never works. The best way to get people to act more like us if we're doing a good job is for us to have a sound economy, a sound dollar, treat people decently, have a foreign policy that makes common sense, treat people like we want to be treated, and then maybe they would want to emulate us and say, freedom does work, and we ought to try it.
Osama bin Laden is dead. We've been in Afghanistan for 10 years. Isn't it time to bring our combat troops home from Afghanistan?
Let me continue, and that is, I think we've learned some important lessons in our experience in Afghanistan. I want those troops to come home based upon not politics, not based upon economics, but instead based upon the conditions on the ground determined by the generals.
I wouldn't wait for my generals. I'm the commander-in-chief. I make the decisions. I tell the generals what to do, and I'd bring them home as quickly as possible, and I'd get them out of Iraq as well, and I wouldn't start a war in Libya. I'd quit bombing Yemen, and I'd quit bombing Pakistan. I'd start taking care of people here at home because we could save hundreds of billions of dollars. Our national security is not enhanced by our presence over there. We have no purpose there. We should learn the lessons of history, and the longer we're there, the worse things are, and the more danger we're in as well, because our presence there is not making friends, let me tell you.
But we have found out that of all those trillions of dollars created by the Fed, guess what? 1/3 of those funds went to foreign banks. Makes no sense. And we find out that some of those funds actually went to banks partially owned by Gaddafi. Now, if that can make any sense, I don't understand it. But I think the people, once they know about this, will be outraged and are outraged at what has been going on with our monetary system. There's too much spending, too much debt, too much borrowing, and it's time to stop the spending.
Where was the anger when we were spent into a $1.3 trillion deficit in the prison? Listen, this has appeared out of nowhere.
It should have been there, and I'm partially to blame.
And why did Fox News not treat Ron Paul better when he's been talking about this stuff for the past 8 years, look, 10 years?
I watched the Republican debate, and I saw this guy, Ron Paul. He's my new hero.
I'm a grown man now. I don't have too many personal heroes, but Ron Paul is in fact one of them.
The winner is Ron Paul, Texas congressman. He got 30% of the votes. This is the second year in a row that Ron Paul has won this. He has a lot of supporters.
He's hugely popular. He wins our FoxNews.com live polls. People felt that he was the top man in the political debate that we had.
Ron Paul is the winner of the RLC.